So, question, do you happen to have little bits of leftover sock yarn lying around everywhere? Like little bits that have been left over from different projects? Yeah, yes, I do as well. So today what I want to share with you is how I am making scrappy socks with all of my leftover bits and pieces of yarn to make some really fun, beautiful, colorful socks to wear. Ta-da! Hey guys, thank you so much for being here today. I am Felicia from SweetGeorgia, and this is my attic where I make tons of things, whether it's weaving or spinning or machine knitting. I have created my own little cozy little sock knitting corner here with my circular sock knitting machine, and I'm going to show you how I make my scrappy socks on the circular sock knitting machine. Of course, you can make scrappy socks with hand knitting, with two circulars, with two at a time, however you want to knit socks, you can do this. Basically, what I'm doing is I am compiling all of the little bits and pieces of sock yarn that I have left over from various projects. I have been collecting them in bins. I have acquired a number of bins. And so now I've just pulled out a collection of ends that I want to use. You don't actually need that much yarn to make a sock. Usually a sock takes me about 30 grams, maybe 40 grams worth of yarn, fingering weight yarn. So you don't need actually a ton of yarn. So a lot of these scraps will go a long, long way. All of these yarns are leftover sock yarn. Some of these are Tough Love. So this is in Arbutus. I know that this is Tough Love in Amber Ale. This is Mohair Silk Sock. This is Tough Love Sock in Gather, I believe. This is Tough Love Sock in Forest Walk. This is Tough Love Sock in Helios. This was knit into a sample that I was demonstrating CSM knitting at the Vogue Knitting Retreat, and I didn't have enough yarn to finish the actual sock, so it just made kind of like a heel sample. So obviously this is not really useful. I'm gonna take this apart and reuse the yarn from it. I believe that this is actually some Cash Luxe Fine. So this is cashmere sock yarn. Maybe like a couple of rounds here and there could be interesting with this bright pop of color. There is more Tough Love Sock. Just have Tough Love Sock everywhere in so many different colors, and they're always in these kind of little tiny balls. Not enough to do much with, but definitely enough to make scrappy socks. So basically the technique for making these scrappy socks, or you can call them Frankenstein socks, is basically just using the technique that I've shown in a previous tutorial, and it's the faux Russian join technique. You're basically taking one color of yarn and the second color of yarn and taking those two yarns and interlacing them like this, interlocking them, and then knitting them together at the same time. So you might knit 3 stitches with the two yarns held together and another 3 stitches after the join. And so I do that on my circular sock knitting machine, but you can absolutely do this with hand knitting as well. I have a couple of examples of these scrappy socks here. They are very fun, very bright, very colorful. This is the first one that I made. So you can see I was doing a hung hem on this with the first color. And then I switched to doing about 8 rounds of the second color. And all of these stripes are approximately 8 rounds. And so you can see what that looks like by doing 8 rounds of color and switching colors in between. All of these colors, I just picked a random palette of color. I didn't really think too much about what I was pulling out. I was just making random decisions as they came. And then I chose to do a very, very bold, high contrast magenta pink heel. And so you can see here I'm doing a few rounds before doing the heel and then a few rounds after. So it's 4 rounds of magenta before and 4 rounds after to connect the whole thing, and then knitting the foot and then the toe. So with the second sock that I knit, I decided I wanted skinnier stripes. And so all of these rounds, there's 4 rounds of color for each section. And again, I like the sock a little bit more because I decided to use colors that were all around the same kind of feel. They all have a little bit more of like a autumny, warm toned colors. There's warm green, there's brown, there's warm blue in there. So this deep teal sort of turquoisey kind of color is a warm blue. There's warm reds, there's plums, there's browns. There's just like a lot of warm autumny sort of colors, and still with vibrant pops of color throughout. So that one was really fun. I like these sort of 4 round stripes. I think that that's a good amount of striping. versus this one, which has a little bit less striping, less color changes. So I'm gonna make another sock like this with 4 rounds of color for each section and then kind of go from there. So I am gonna start knitting on my machine here, but basically I'm using the same formula or the same recipe that I've taught previously in previous videos. There's a sock knitting video that's called How I Crank My Socks, and that basically shows you exactly how I knit my socks. I knit a hung hem for about 24 rounds, and then I knit a stockinette leg for about 60 or 70 rounds. Then I work a short row heel. I knit about 60, 63 rounds for the foot, and then I do a short row toe. Very, very straightforward. So I'm going to do that, and I'm going to incorporate that faux Russian join technique to do all of the striping. Okay, so I've just installed my ripcord, and I am going to just start with my first color of yarn. I think that the main challenge with working with all of these random little bits and pieces of yarn is that I haven't taken the time to wind these onto cones. I'm going to keep them in a ball format, and I'm going to pop them in my little yarn bowl here. And I want to set it up so that way the yarn will come off the outside of the ball and wind off really nicely. I don't want there to be any catches or any snags because that will affect the tension in my sock. And so I'm going to pop in the first yarn here. And again, I knit the first round without the heel spring on. Okay, then I add my heel spring and reset my counter to 0. And now I'm going to just crank my 24 rounds for my hung hem. Going to hang my hem, take my weight off, and pull up all my stitches. Okay, so the hung hem is done. I'm going to put my weights back on. And I have cranked 1 round after that hung hem, after joining the hung hem. And I'm going to switch yarns colors now. So I'm going to break this yarn. Now here is my corner mark. This is where the corners of my heels are going to happen. And so this back half is where my heel is done. And it looks like I'm changing colors here. I don't want the color changes to end up on the front of my foot. I would like them to be sort of at the middle back of my foot. And so I'm going to do my color changes back here next time. But the next thing I'm going to do is maybe let's swap colors to this Arbutus color. And then with my old end and with my new yarn, I'm going to interlock the two. So I'm kind of folding it back on itself and then folding the new yarn. So you can see where that join is happening right there. And I'm going to tuck in my ends to my slotted yarn carrier like so. Then I can crank forward, and then you can see my new yarn is doubled up and it's going to be cranking in as well. And I only need to crank in just a few stitches. It doesn't have to be a ton of stitches. And so with that loose end, I'm going to pull that extra end out, and then I'm going to continue with my new yarn. So I'm going to reset my counter here. My counter is going to be at 0 now, and I'm going to change yarn colors every 4 rounds. Okay, so I'm going to stop at this side. It's 4 rounds. I'm going to stop at this side so that I can make my yarn color change. So now we'll switch to Amber Ale. Okay, so I've knit 4 rounds and I'm going to change colors now. So again, I'm going to change colors here at this side and pop in my next color. So the most challenging part of making these scrappy socks is really just doing this faux Russian join over and over and over again with every color change every 4 rounds. It's not at all difficult. It's just a lot of color changing. And you can see here I have popped in the mohair silk sock. This yarn happens to be a little bit thinner, a little bit finer than the Tough Love sock, but I'm going to combine them both in the same sock. It shouldn't matter too much because this is just the leg portion, and so one spot might be a little bit thinner, but you want to try to aim to have the same weight of yarn, the same type of yarn in all of your stripes. So I'm going to knit all the way around, 1 and 2. Okay, so 2 rounds of the toe color, and then I'm going to lift up all of the back stitches, or actually this is the front of the foot, and I'm going to work the toe over the back. Okay, we are done our sock. Okay, so now I'm just coming to the front. I'm just removing my ravel cord, or rip cord, ravel cord, whatever you want to call it. So this fishing line just eases out really easily, and then ta-da, it all comes apart. Okay, there you have it. There is our Frankenstein scrappy sock made up of a whole bunch of different sock yarns. We just laid them on 4 rounds at a time and just changing colors at the back of the sock. You can barely see where those joins happened. If you look very closely, you can see maybe some doubled up stitches over here. I would just tidy that up a little bit, clean that up a little bit, and then trim the ends that are basically on the inside of the sock. I would just trim all those down and then wash and block your sock. It'll feel really great, really lovely, and all these fun little colorful stripes. This is my Halloween themed sock. Some orange, some purple, some green in here. Just really nice and fun. You know, you think about it, these are lovely socks, of course, but you could also use this for a cowl if you didn't make the heel, of course, but you could knit yourself a cowl with stripes, knit yourself some wrist warmers with stripes, and see how that looks and feels, right? Wrist warmers. Lots of different ways that you can use all of your sock yarn. So, scrappy socks, take your pick. 4 rounds, or 8 rounds of color. All sorts of different ideas, things you can play with. Just grab all of your yarn scraps, sock yarn scraps, and you can make your own scrappy little sock as well. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video and you want to learn more about circular sock knitting machines, please do subscribe and watch some of our videos that we've already made. I love my machine. This is the Erlbacher Speedster circular sock knitting machine, and I've been using it for almost 2 years now, I believe, and I love it. I would love to share my journey with you as well. So can't wait to see what you make with your sock knitting machine and your scraps of sock yarn. See you in the next one. All right, bye for now.